Hi, and welcome to Polish at Leeds Trinity. My name is Adrian, and I am a Polish speaker and a third-year student at Leeds Trinity University. In these videos, I'll be talking about and explaining the Polish language. As you all may know, the Polish language is well known for being quite difficult to learn, and this all largely comes down to the letters being pronounced differently and sounds that don't exist in the English language. In this video, I'll be explaining all of these different sounds and pronunciations to make understanding the language just that bit easier. I'll only be going over letters that sound different to the English ones, therefore any letters that aren't in this video are pronounced the same in Polish and in English. Now, let's get into it. First off, we have the letter on. The first thing you'll notice about this letter is that it has a little tail. This is called a diacritic. It can either be a little dot, a slash, or a tail present on a letter, and it completely changes the way the letter is pronounced. This letter is a nasal vowel, meaning that it is pronounced using your nose. To pronounce this letter, try and say the letter O nasally. On. An example of this letter being used in a word is mąka, which means flour in English. The letter C in the Polish language is pronounced as t, which sounds like the letters T and S in the word cats. Due to this difference in pronunciation, words like computer are spelt with a K in the Polish language. An example of the letter T being used in a word is co, which means what in English. Now, the next letter is a variation of this one, so keep that in mind to not get confused. As you can see, this letter has a slash above it, meaning that it has a diacritic, and it will sound completely differently to a normal T. This letter is pronounced as ch, and it sounds like the C and H in the word champion. An example of the letter ch being used in a word is ćma, which means moth in English. This letter E also has a diacritic, as well as being a nasal vowel. It is pronounced as and it sounds like a nasal E, or e to be more accurate. An example of the letter being used in a word is lubię, which means I like. However, when the letter is at the end of a word, it is often pronounced as a normal E. Therefore, the word would be said like this, lubię. The letter I in the Polish language is pronounced as E, which sounds similar to the two E's in the word sheep. An example of the letter E being used in a word is impreza, which is the noun version of party in English. The letter J in the Polish language is pronounced as y, which in the English language would sound like the Y in the word yes. An example of the letter y being used in a word is ja jestem, which translates to I am in English. As you can see, this letter looks like an L, however it has a diacritic going through it, making it the letter W. This letter sounds similar to the W in the word Y. An example of this letter being used in a word is łuk, which means bow in English. This letter too has a diacritic, completely changing the way you'd think it to be pronounced. This letter is pronounced in Polish as nie, which sounds like the N and Y in the word canyon or the N and I in onion. An example of this letter being used in a word is koń, which means horse in English. This letter R is interesting, as it's the only letter in the Polish language that rolls. What I mean by this is that it is said in such a way that it rolls off the tongue, like this, r. An example of this letter being used in a word is droga, which means road in English. Once again, this letter has a diacritic, making it sound different to a normal S. This letter is pronounced as sh, which sounds like a slightly higher pitched sh in the word sharp. An example of this letter being used in a word is śniadanie, which means breakfast in English. This letter O also has a diacritic, and it is pronounced as U. and it sounds like the O's in the word took. A confusing aspect about this letter and its pronunciation is that it is identical to the way the letter U is pronounced in Polish. Both these letters in the Polish language sound the same, and the only way to know which words use one letter or the other is by remembering their exact spelling. An example of this letter being used in a word is sól, which means salt in English. There isn't any real difference between the pronunciation of the Polish W and an English V. Both letters in both languages sound the same. Therefore, the Polish W is pronounced like the V in the word vulture. An example of this letter being used in a word is wracaj, which means come back in English. The letter Y in the Polish language is pronounced as I, which in the English language would sound like the I in the word fit. An example of the letter I being used in a word is ty, which translates to you in English. In the Polish language, alongside the normal letter Z, there are two more letter Z's that use diacritics. This is the first one. This letter is pronounced as zh, and it is loosely pronounced like the S and U in the word treasure. An example of the letter zh being used in a word is źle, which means wrong in English. This is the second letter Z in the Polish language that uses a diacritic, and it is pronounced quite similarly to the first one. The last letter was pronounced as zh, and this one is pronounced as zh. It is difficult to use English words to illustrate the difference between the two pronunciations of these Z's, because in English they are indistinguishable. The way to make both of these sounds is by making the normal Z sound, then changing the position of your tongue. The normal Z sound is made when your tongue is just behind the teeth, but the zh and zh sounds are made by having your tongue below or above your teeth. Z, zh, zh. An example of the letter zh being used in a word is żabka, which means frog in English. Now, just before the end of this video, I'll be recapping all the different letters, sounds, and example words that I've gone over in this video. On, mąka, c, to, ć, ćma, lubię, impreza, ja jestem, łuk, koń, droga, śniadanie, sól, wracaj, ty, źle, żabka. That is all for this video. The next video will be about how to pronounce Polish digraphs, which are two letters combined together to make different sounds. If you'd like to see more videos like this, check out the Leeds Trinity YouTube channel at Leeds Trinity. Thank you for watching, or as they say in Polish, dziękuję.